Hi guys, welcome back to History with Heath, and today we'll be talking about how Yundrung evolved from Zurvanism, the heretical Zoroastrian tradition. But first, let me just sort some things out. My faith is Yundrung Buddhism, but I also practice Bon alongside it, which may sound surprising to many individuals. However, in Bhutan, Bhutanese Tibetan Buddhists do the exact same thing and practice Bon as well as Buddhism, with Buddhism still being the main tradition. I personally devote my practice of Yundrung Bon to deities like Shedab Chama and Buddha Shenlab. Anyway, the origins of Bon are very contested within the Tibetologist community, with being a stark divide between the theory of it evolving from Zurvanism and the theory of it evolving from Kashmiri psychodentic Buddhism. From my research, I've personally found that I believe that Yundrung Bon did evolve from Zurvanism, and that there is a lot of evidence that shows this. I've watched a video by Muon Stone, which I recommend, which has greatly helped me with my research around this. So first, I'm going to talk about the Bon creation story, which I think has lots of parallels with Zurvanism and is probably the main evidence that Yundrung Bon did come from Zurvanism. In that, Srimad Puk, the Treasury of Existence, which is one of the Yundrung Bon's main cosmological texts, the universe begins when a white egg of light forms from positive, luminous energies, and a black egg of darkness forms from negative, heavy energies. And that luminous energy is from Kuntang Gangpo, which is the Tibetan name for Samantabhadra, which many of you would know as the main Adi Buddha in the Enigma tradition. And then the black egg probably came from, I haven't done research into the origin of the eggs, but I'm guessing it probably came from things like, what in Buddhism we would know as the maras, like the greed, suffering, just evil actions, basically. And these eggs weren't actually created by, Kutang example, they self-arose from the interplay of primordial forces. And then we have Shenla Oka, who illuminated the white egg and strengthened its positive potential, and then subdued and pacified the dark egg and prevented chaos from coming from it. And that's why some say he created the eggs, but he actually didn't. They just meant it in a way that he activated them and empowered them, not that he actually made them. And then, after both cosmic eggs open, the deity Sangpo Bumtri comes out, as well as lots of other things, deities and that kind of thing, like Buddha Shenlab. He's known as the Lord of Existence, and he has no eyes and no mouth. And he is the creator in the way that he was the actual one who shaped the physical universe, organised the realm, generated beings, and established the cycles of time. And if you want to westernise the concept, then it's in a simplified way. Just say Sangpo Bumtri is the creator. He is the creator deity. Not the supreme deity, but he is the creator. And you might be thinking, oh, Heath, how can you practice Bon alongside Buddhism if Bon has a creation story, which is like the big no-no in Buddhism? Well, the thing about that is that, I know I've already said this, but the thing about that is that it can be a paya. It doesn't actually have to happen. It's just paya, skillful means of teaching the ways. Or you could believe it did happen, but it just happens every cycle. And when I say cycle, I mean kalpa, when the universe degenerates and then regenerates. Which is why I personally believe in the big crush theory for where the universe will end. Because I think that fits into the Buddhist idea that the universe never ends, and that it will just degenerate and then eventually regenerate. Anyway, Sangpo Bumtri creates I've already said this, but he arranges the heavens, forms the earth, creates first humans, and establishes order and structure. This relates to Zurvanism because instead of eggs in the Zurvanite creation story, it says that Zurvan created Ahura Mazda, the light, and Aharam, the dark. And Zurvan isn't good or bad. And you might be thinking, that means Kuntang Example is good or bad. Well, Kuntang Example didn't create him. He's the Adi Buddha, which, if you know anything about Vajrayana Buddhism like me, then you know that the Adi Buddha doesn't create things, even though he is the universe. He doesn't create things. And you might be thinking, he's not the universe because of Shentong, Rangtong, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I know. I'm just simplifying it because I'm not going to talk about that right now, okay? I've already explained Shentong in my first video about the history of Buddhism. Anyway, the prophet Zarathustra is Buddha shown out of Miwa because in Western Tibet he was known as Modhatan, which comes from Zarathustra. And the only reason why they don't call him that anymore is because just the Eastern Tibetan name of Sherab Miwa took over. And it's also that Sherab Miwa came from the land of Olmalung Ridge, which me and Muon Stone in his video said that it's probably either Tajikistan or Iran or Afghanistan, which is where Zarathustra was from, because the modern borders of Iran or Persia are very different from how they used to be. Anyway, you might be asking the question of, so you basically see Zarathustra as a Buddha. Well, I'm not disproving Zoroastrians here or saying that's wrong, but I personally believe that out of his teachings, the ones that became Zoroastrianism and the ones that became Bon, I think Bon is the true one. But remember, my Bon isn't my proper religion. Like, my main religion is Buddhism, but I still practice Bon. I still have Bon books about it. And I have pictures of Bon deities like Shedab Chama. Anyway, let's talk about the different types of Bon. So there's prehistoric Bon, which is just Tibetan shamanism basically, which existed in Zangzung in Tibet. And if you wanted to know, Zangzung was the ancient kingdom of Tibet that had its main religion as Bon, and it was like the main state before the Tibetan Empire, which became, of course, a Buddhist state. Prehistoric Bon is just, a mixture of shamanism, maybe a bit of ancient Vedism in there, and maybe even some Sky-Deer Eurasian cult. Then there's Eternal Bon, or Yundrung Bon, which is the main Bon that most Bon posts practice, including myself, which traces back to Buddha Tompa Shenrab and of the sages from Zangzung. These religions developed around the 8th to the 11th century and are similar to Buddhism, of course, which is why, of course, I practice Bon. And they, of course, do include ancient elements that are pre-Buddhist, like the fortune, the blah, and the ransom rituals, which came from the prehistoric Godamai Bon. And there's New Bon, also known as Bon Sanma, which, of course, sounds similar because of the Sama Buddhist schools, which means new, so just Sama means new. And it's also known as Bonsa, which is a syncretic tradition that includes elements from internal Bon and Tibetan Buddhism, including the worship of the Buddhist figure Padmasambhava, who lots of people believe to be, including myself, to be the reincarnation of Shakyamuni Buddha. This new movement dates from the 14th century and was mainly active in eastern Tibet. And then there's also, especially Dmitry Ermakov, who is a Tibetologist who studied Bon. He also added a term called mixed Bon, which is a blend of these three types of Bon in different proportions, often with the addition of elements from other religions such as Hinduism, Taoism, Himalayan tribal religions, native Siberian beliefs, etc. Mixed Bon will include secular Bon, the civil religion of the Himalayan border, studied by Charles Ramble in his Navel of Demoness, as well as Buddhism Bormorga from the shores of Lake Baikal, and the religion of the Nanki in Yunnan, and so on. Of course, I didn't say that, Dmitry Ermakov said that. But if you want to know what he means by that is, in places today like Nepal and Siberia and Mongolia, where Bon does have a small presence, it probably did mix a lot with, of course, Buddhism, Himalayan beliefs, and, of course, in the northern Siberia and Mongolia, the native Siberian belief systems, and Tengrism. And what I would just like to say is you might be thinking, what? Bon exists in Mongolia and Siberia? Well, you know how Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, transmitted to Mongolia and Siberia, where it's the main religion. Well, Bon, being so similar, was able to kind of piggyback off this and convert, which can also be seen today in modern times, where, of course, with lots of Westerners like myself becoming Buddhist, there are lots who become Bon. And I think, you're Bon as well. Well, no, Buddhism is my main practice, and I keep saying this, but Bon is just like an addition. Like, it's still in there, but it's just an addition. And what I mean is, like, these people are people who become Buddhist, and they become Bon. Because if I could talk about a new Bon can't be synchronized with Buddhism. Because you might think, but it is synchronized with Buddhism. And what I mean, you can't practice new Bon as a Buddhist. You can only practice Yundrung Bon. And that's because they see, of course, Bon as the main one, and the Buddhism is just extra bits, which is the complete opposite of what the Bhutanese Buddhists do. And what these Bhutanese Buddhists do is very different in Tibet, where there's a stark contrast between Bon and Tibetan Buddhism. Anyway, let's talk about the symbols. I'm going to add this in my video. You're seeing that right now. So there's the Bon flag, which has 5 stripes, and the Chandrika symbol in the centre, which has 2 left-facing swastikas known as Yundrung. And what I'd like to say is that the main reason to tell if the art you're looking at, the Tibetan art, is Buddhist or Bon, is to see there's a swastika, because there's usually a lot of swastikas. And most of it will be Buddhist and will have the right-facing swastika. But if it has a left-facing swastika, then it's definitely Bon. The Chakshing is a Bon scepter, and I think it's basically like the Bon Vajra. It's very similar, and it's basically 2 Yundrungs connected in the middle, and it's basically like a Vajra, but without like the little Vajra tail bit, if you know what I mean, at the ends. Dompa Shenrab's life story is very similar to the Buddha, and personally, you might be asking me, what do you believe about Dompa Shenrab? Well, I don't really know. I think he was probably, what I like to say is, maybe, probably like, I don't know, like, I never really thought about it, but probably just like maybe a Buddha, maybe a reincarnation of a previous Buddha. Because they do say that Shakyamuni, in Bon they do say that Shakyamuni is the reincarnation of Dompa Shenrab. I don't believe that, and some people also say that, I've seen somewhere that he's like a previous incarnation of the Buddha. I don't believe that. I think he's probably just like a reincarnation of like Kasapa Buddha. Anyway, that's gonna be all for today. I'll catch you on the next one. Check out Milwan Stone and his video on how Bon evolved from Zurvanism. And goodbye.